The following program is hosted by immature, irreverent, obnoxious, and often disgusting young men. Listener discretion is advised.
This time on Nude Clan, the great console debate concludes? Maybe?
Shall we play a game?
You got several things to do. You got work, kids in school. What do you do when it's all over?
How do you hand something from one player to another?
Dark soul light. So turn on the TV, pick up the controller and play some games with the new clan.
Welcome to Nude Clan, the video game podcast that decides what the greatest video game console of all time is by way of arbitrary bracket seating. I'm your host, A4 Extreme.
I'm Joe.
I am Caleb.
And I'm Zach. And today, we are possibly concluding the great console bracket. We're taking all the game consoles, all the handhelds, putting them up against each other. We've only got a few more matchups here. The final 8 we have are the PlayStation 2, the Super Nintendo, the PlayStation 1, the Nintendo 64, the NES, the Wii, the Nintendo DS, and the Nintendo Switch.
So it's Nintendo versus Sony.
Pretty much, yes.
Okay.
Who could have seen it coming? I guess we'll just jump right into it. The first matchup of the night is the PlayStation 2 versus the SNES, and this is a
No.
fucking toughie.
No, that's not the first match of the night, you fuck.
Okay, fine. The
Change
first
it.
The
Change
first
it.
matchup of the night is the Nintendo Switch versus the Nintendo DS.
Okay, that's a better one. That's a better one to start on. Don't fucking do that shit. Those are the two best consoles.
I know.
Like you can't fuck with that shit.
I
know.
thought we already took care of the Super Nintendo problem. Was that? Am I just imagining things?
You are just
You are
imagining
imagining
things.
things.
What did it go up against last time? That's probably why you're mad. The
I don't know. It
PS3.
doesn't matter. It'll win every one of them.
No, because the SNES went up against the PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 3. That's probably why Schweiss thinks that it didn't win.
Wait, the SNES went against the PS5.
And the PS3, yes.
Hmm.
Sorry, man. That's just how it turned out.
Yeah, I mean those are not the greatest. I mean PS5 is still young, but PS3 is kind of like.
Did you see that picture that someone... I shared it, but someone took a picture of the Wikipedia list of PlayStation 5 exclusives. There are literally 5 games on that list.
Yeah, it's not great right now.
That's... yeah. I'm like actually shocked. I like joke about PS5 not having exclusives, but that's kind of nuts, considering it's been out for almost 2 years.
Yeah, I mean I don't regret nothing in buying it.
I'm not trying to make you regret it. I'm just surprised. I'm like, Jesus Christ.
No, I know exactly what you're doing.
Join the PC Master Race, Schweiss. It's warm over here. It's great. We have titties in our games. So anyway, the Switch or the DS? What do you guys think? Because I like both of these a lot.
It's tough not to just think about like the game library on the Switch, and just automatically give it to that because of what can be downloaded onto it, even though those games are like from, let's say, the greatest console of all time, the Super Nintendo or the the Wii or something like that.
Right.
The DS, so it was really like what gimmick is better? I think as a handheld console, I think the DS is better. It just has better like battery lasting. It's smaller. It's actually portable in a way that the Switch isn't.
This is
But
true.
then again, the Switch is also like, the Switch is also a mainline console at the same time. And actually, you know what? I think I'm gonna go on. I'm gonna side on the DS on this one. I am, because like the Switch is not the best console, and it's not the best handheld console at the same time.
Right.
And I think the DS is, as a handheld console, in its like line, I think it's just like, I think it's a better machine for what it is, and for what it's made for, and also has a great game library. Also has a whole bunch of Nintendo classics that you could have bought on the store back then. It also had like that like cross-play thing where you could be in the room. It was kind of a
The download play. Yeah.
yeah. It was kind of moving forward multiplayer technology in that way. So I think it's solidly with the DS personally.
Schweiss, what do you think?
I want you to go first.
See, I love both of these dearly. The DS is easily one of my favorite handhelds of all time. I've spent so much time with that thing. And the fact that it's also backwards compatible with the GBA is a huge boon. I mean, the Switch has a giant library, but in the case of like a bunch of those games, you're not even getting the best versions of those games, which I guess is also true of the DS for certain titles, but not nearly as many. And honestly, like the games that use the DS hardware gimmicks are more pronounced than what, like, because the Switch has the motion controllers, and some games use some of the stuff that those motion controllers can do very well, but not nearly as many as that use the DS's touchscreen and like the microphone, and even just having the two screens like better used. So I feel like I have to side with Joe on this one. Like I think it's got to go to the DS just because it's kind of got more of its own identity. Like the Switch's versatility of being a console that can go portable is really cool, but not without its drawbacks. Whereas I think like the DS is just more of like a concentrated experience. Like the things that were made for the DS are made for the DS with that hardware in mind, with those gimmicks in mind.
Yeah, rather than being ported to.
Yeah, there's very few games that are made with like the Switch in mind, and the ones that are like don't really utilize the things that it can do uniquely. Mostly because it kind of has less things it can do uniquely in the first place. Like it's cool that the Switch, like you can take the controllers off and like hand one of the Joy-Cons to somebody else and just have a quick 2-player game with the console and like with the kickstand out. Like that's neat, but I can probably only count on the like one hand the number of times I've actually utilized that.
Yeah.
Whereas like you have so many insane games for the DS that use both screens masterfully, that use the touch screens well, the microphone, all that jazz. I don't think there's gyro in the DS. I'm not sure, but yeah, I think I got to go with the DS just because it's kind of got more of its own identity as a handheld console, honestly.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have it edge out the Switch as well. It's a close fight. I mean, I'm excited to get the Switch out of there because it's definitely outclassed by everything that remains. But I don't know, man. The Switch, kind of like you guys are saying, it's a really great console for like things that came out before. It's like one of those great retro consoles, you know? It's kind of like how people use their PSPs. Like I used my PSP a lot to play old PS1 games.
Sort of similar to what the Vita does. Like honestly, everything the Vita did, the Switch does better. Like it's why I like the Switch so much, because I loved the Vita.
Except battery life, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what are you gonna do with things like this big?
And the controller drift.
Yeah, but I meant like the cross-play ability, like the ability to like play something. Like it was what you had to transfer something from PS3 to Vita, like Sly 4 or PlayStation All-Stars. But the idea of taking a console experience on the go with the same data, the Switch can do that just natively. And on top of that, it's just got loads and loads and loads of older games because the Vita can access all the digital PSP titles, the PS1 classics, and whatever else they port. So yeah, basically everything the Vita does, I think the Switch does better, and that's probably why I like it so much.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one, though. I'll admit. I mean, as much shit as I give the Switch, there is a lot of great things about it. Like, it has a lot of great. You get a lot of great access to classic games. But I mean, it's kind of like a weak. To me, I mean, it's kind of a weak one on the PS, especially against PS4 and like at least PS4. I don't know.
I mean, it's weak against its own like console competitors, like the Xbox One and the PS4. But it's almost not trying to compete with them anyway. You know what I mean?
No, they're in their own fight almost. They're like
Yeah.
battling their own different enemies, and Xbox and PlayStation are fighting, and Switch is just doing something else. Or
And it's
Nintendo.
working for him. I think it's like the fastest selling console of all time.
I think the PS5 is faster selling.
Uh,
Somehow.
You might be right on that, honestly.
I don't know how, because no one could fucking
Oh,
get
well,
one.
yeah, exactly.
That's why. But I mean, the Switch was a big deal, and it still is a big deal. It's selling like crazy. Like,
People
it's
were
still-
expecting them to drop a new Switch recently, like a Switch Pro or something, and they didn't. It was just like it was like a Splatoon themed Switch OLED, which I guess
Yeah.
is like the Switch Pro, but it's not really.
Kinda, yeah.
It's like the DS Lite of the Switch. It's like, okay, well the screen's nicer.
yeah, yeah. So this is a tough one, but I mean, there were a lot of great, even good FFs on Nintendo DS. Like I really enjoyed.
Four Heroes of Light,
Tactics A2, yeah, Four Heroes of Light. Like it's
and
one
it's
of
got
those
the 3 and
weird
4
areas-
remakes, the 3D ones.
Yeah, it's one of those weird areas where the Final Fantasy stuff that's on it is actually not bad.
Just don't pay attention to Revenant Wings.
Yeah, Revenant Wings is a little rough, but I don't know. The DS. I mean, admittedly, I like the 3DS and stuff like that more, but that is a DS, and I really like my 3D. I don't like my current 3DS. I like the one that got stolen from me, the 3DS XL.
Yeah,
it's
3DS XL
really-
is nice.
It's a really nice, like finely tuned piece of machinery.
But we already knocked the 3DS out of the contest.
Yeah, yeah. But
Switch
so
did it.
I've mostly played that as opposed to the actual Nintendo DS, but it has an extremely impressive library. And you're right, it utilizes all of its features extremely well.
And it can play Game Boy Advance games, which already that's a handheld with a great library of its own.
Yeah, exactly.
Can it
And
also
this-
play? Do they use the same attachment for the Game Boy and Game Boy Color games?
I don't think it can play Game Boy or Game Boy Color games.
Oh,
I think it's only
For some reason, I
GBA.
thought it could.
The Game Boy Advance SP and the Game Boy Advance can. I don't think the DS can.
Yeah,
I'm trying to remember because
I don't think it does.
yeah, I don't think it can either. It's been I haven't had a normal DS for a while.
I've
Yeah,
never
I think I had
owned
to borrow
I've-
one. Yeah, I didn't.
played
I
one.
never owned one.
But like ever since I got a 3DS, I kind of didn't have a DS. But
Yeah, I've played one, and I know they're super reliable, and they had cool things like internet browser and like the camera on it. And
you're
like,
thinking of
it
the
was-
DSi.
Oh, am I really?
Yeah, which is still part of the DS library, so it kind of
It is, yeah. That's like that's like the pro version,
more or
but
less.
there were
Yeah,
a lot of cool things, and I kind of wanted one when I was younger, but I just never had the money or anything to get it. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna give it to DS as well. So we don't need to consult Zach.
it's okay because he voted for the Switch anyway, so
Oh, did you really?
he lost that one. Yeah.
Mm.
So the DS goes on to the semifinal, but now we're going to decide whether or not the NES or the Wii is better.
Oh fuck!
Two
Wait,
very
what were
influential consoles, honestly.
So did you just just randomly change the PS2 from fighting with the, or is that later?
No, this
That's
is the
later because
NES.
it's going up against the SNES, and that's going to be a
Oh.
debate.
That's the Super NES.
It's
versus
too
NES.
bad they have to be in the same conference. Like they couldn't face each other. in
Ideally,
Super-
yeah, they would be going up against each other, but these were just randomly seeded at the beginning, so it is how it is.
All right, that's fine.
Okay. That's a tough one, man. Like I love the NES. Like they're what's funny about both these systems, how huge they are and influential they are, and
Yeah.
like for their generation, it's like there was no outside of the Atari really, and like all the other like, after Atari like tanked the video game industry.
Yeah,
This is the thing that revitalized it was the NES.
Well,
And I think
the NES was
thing that
like
changed it up was the Wii.
the NES was like the de facto, like if you were going to play video games, that was probably the console you'd use in the 80s. And then like I know that the 360 and the PS3 were also huge, but like you got to remember how many casual people just owned a Wii for Wii Sports and like almost nothing else. Maybe Mario
Yeah.
Kart.
Or like grandmothers, like
Yeah,
buy
well that's what I
video
mean. Like
game
people who wouldn't
console
normally
for the
play
first
video
time.
games.
yeah. My grandparents had it, and my grandpa played the bowling like all the time.
So in a
Yeah.
way, like these are both extremely influential consoles just for getting people into gaming that normally wouldn't.
Yeah, they're super important consoles. They're funny. It's funny they're up against each other because they're also both shitty in their own ways too.
Yeah.
like the blowing into the cartridge shit.
Tons
for
of
the
shovelware on
NES.
both of them. I mean, I guess that's a problem for most consoles, but like it's really bad on the Wii. And
Yeah, that's when Nintendo had to start doing their for the NES or for the Super NES. They started doing their like Nintendo quality seal of approval.
I think that was
thing.
also on the NES, but
Was that on the NES?
I
Oh,
feel like it was, but I didn't grow up with the NES, so don't quote me on that.
okay.
Yeah,
I
they just
did.
had too many
This was my
stickers
first one.
laying around.
This
So
was
they
my
got-
first video game console when I was a little kid. So I remember I was not good at any of these games, but I played a lot of the original Super Mario Bros. A lot of Legend of Zelda. There was a Ninja Turtles game that I played a lot. The old Jurassic Park game that was on the NES. Oh no, I'm fucking that up. But the first three, yes. The other one I played at a friend's house down the street. I think it's getting in my memory a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, fuck. There's some classics on the NES. I think the game library might edge out the Wii just because there's so much shovelware title stuff on the Wii.
Yeah, and like the Wii's,
Yeah.
like the Wii has a lot of good games, but it's mostly just for that like motion control gimmick. And the games that don't even utilize that well there's way too many of them.
And the thing is though, like they're all also continuations of games that were on the NES.
Yeah, I
right?
mean
They're all-
NES gets a lot of
like,
push.
so many of those are sequels. Like Super Mario Galaxy wouldn't have happened without fucking Super Mario Bros. Like kicking ass on the NES.
Yeah, I mean
right?
like
So,
the NES kind of has an advantage here just by virtue of it starting all these franchises. There are like a few original franchises that started on Wii from Nintendo, but there's not a lot of them.
yeah, but they aren't Zelda.
No.
They
When you think of Nintendo franchises,
Mario
you think of
Bros.
Zelda. You don't think of Excitebots or
no,
fucking Fling Smash or yeah, whatever.
no. So I don't know. I think NES edges it out as being more important. I think maybe the games are better because they're newer. A lot of the great games on the Wii are better than the great games on the NES. Like as far as like their technology and playability and how fun they are today.
Yeah, but there's almost like a
that's
level of
what's tough.
timelessness to some of those NES games. Like even
Some of them, yeah.
I mean even if the clunky the original Mario Brothers is, it's still infinitely playable right now.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Or the original Zelda. It's a little cryptic, but like as long as you have like a few hints here and there, you can get through that shit no problem.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I-
That's a
yeah.
tough one. I think I'm edging it out to the NES, and a lot of that is nostalgia for me. But I'm gonna give it to the NES personally.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna mirror the NES just because, like, the Wii's great and everything, but like its software library is weighed down a lot more by shit. And I know the NES has a lot of shit games too. I just think that it has more good games than the Wii has good games.
Yeah, I'm also a Final Fantasy fan. Not that Final Fantasy is the best one. Some old people think that.
I mean,
way,
you got to
but,
remember that
you're wrong.
FF2 and 3 are also on the NES technically.
Yeah, that's true.
And you got to remember the Final Fantasies that are on the Wii.
And the series that ripped off Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, the first 4 of those are on the NES. So
If I were basing it purely on the Final Fantasy quality, that would be a toss up. That would be a toss up. They're both kind of shitty
yeah,
If I were basically just on Final
in that.
I mean,
version.
NES doesn't have anything quite like My Life as a Dark Lord. So
The NES version of Final Fantasy 1 is did
Bad.
not age well.
yeah.
Did not
It's like
age well.
programmed badly. It's like all the spells
Yeah.
are like moved one cell to the left by accident, and some of them just don't work.
But
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with the Wii on this one.
Okay.
I think it is a pretty close matchup. And at first I was like, oh, definitely the Wii. And then I thought about it more and I was like, no, it does have the NES has a lot of franchise starters, and I would say it's probably maybe more iconic as far as a console goes. But I've never owned one, and I do own a Wii. And I think Wii Sports is probably one of the greatest games ever made.
Honestly,
It's
yeah.
fun. And I think what the Wii did, like that Wii my grandparents had, that wasn't for the kids to play with. That was for them. Like they bought it so they could play, and then yeah, we could use it too. But we weren't the main concern when that thing was being purchased, and everyone wanted one. I wanted one. Wii Sports was a fucking blast. The online stuff was free, so we'd play like Guitar Hero 3 online on the Wii.
Oh yeah.
Like, it's a close fight, but I do think I'm going to give it to the Wii, just barely. The NES is a really good console. Obviously, it was the king at the time. It brought about a lot of games and franchises that we still continue to enjoy to this day, or continue to not play, but know that people are enjoying. With most of them. But I think the Wii, I don't know, I think the way they did the motion controls, I know that's something that's not really, I don't feel like it's going anywhere. I think that's probably going to start to die out.
Yeah, but for the time, they were like, when they worked, they were awesome.
Yeah, they did it really well. And there are some really great games on that console, and I don't know, there's a lot of cool shit that the Wii has. I think it edges out the NES just slightly. Wii Sports being a big help for them. So, did Zach give you a response on this one?
Yeah, it's the NES. So NES takes it.
Anyway, that makes me feel a little better, because then I'm like, I don't know, this is a tough one. Like,
it's a close matchup. Like, with how randomly seeded this is, I'm kind of surprised at how like even some of these matchups are, including our next one, which is just straight up either the 5th or the 6th generation of console showdown, the PS1 versus the N64.
You think that's tough?
I mean,
I'm biased as fuck.
I know what I would pick in this one. But like, if you had asked me when I was younger and I only had access to an N64, this would be a way closer fight.
Yeah, when I was a kid and I couldn't have either of these, I wanted the N64.
Right. I spent most of my childhood time around an N64. I did not know a lot of people that had PlayStations, despite the fact that that was the better selling console at the end of the day.
It must have been for like college students and shit. I bet it skewed older in the audience.
I could see that, yeah, because
I
a
don't
lot of
know.
the people that play Final Fantasy 7 and stuff, they're a little older.
Like growing up, I had so much time with like Mario Kart 64 and Banjo-Kazooie and fucking like Pokemon Snap and stuff like that. But I mean, when you get right down to it,
Pokemon Stadium, that was sweet.
Pokemon Stadium. When you get right down to it, though, at least for me, as an older person who's now had access to both of these games' libraries on the whole, I think the PlayStation easily beats it, just because like the N64 has some real bangers, like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, shit like that. But
yeah,
like
Ocarina of Time,
most of the
Golden
bangers on the N64 are the first party Nintendo titles, whereas like the PlayStation has so many good first party Sony games, but also it's got the third party support from stuff like Square Enix and Crystal Dynamics with like Tomb Raider and Namco and Capcom and all this other stuff. So yeah, I don't know. I got to give it to the PlayStation, honestly. Like my childhood heart breaks for that, because I definitely was an N64 kid growing up, but I recognize that the PlayStation has the way better library and a way less stupid looking controller.
Yeah,
because I actually just got my hands on one of those N64 controllers for the Switch. Finally, they had it in stock on the website. I'm like, I'll buy it now. So I was playing like Mario Kart 64 earlier today, and I'm like, damn, this thumbstick sucks.
Yeah,
I don't know why we ever thought this was good.
Yeah, it's very brutal, and just the way you hold it, it's like, what kind of three-handed person came up with this?
I think the idea they wanted to go with was like it was modular, so like if you played a game that more used the D-pad, like you just hold it with like either end, or if you played one with the analog stick, you held it like more towards the right. It's fucking weird, but
it kind of works.
It does
like
kind of work, but at the same time, it's just like the PlayStation controller, especially like the DualShock, the original DualShock, is like,
oh yeah.
I mean, that controller was so good they used it for 2 more console generations, basically.
3.
Yeah, that's true.
3 more. The PS4.
PS4 is a little different. PS4 kind of changed up the shape just ever so slightly with like those rounder, thicker handles.
Yeah, the 5 is the same thing. It's got a little fatter. It's just a little,
I still have not held a DualShock
time.
5 or whatever DualSense, whatever it's called. I've not held one of those yet.
It's a nice controller.
I want
It's
to.
a nice controller,
It
but
looks stupid.
mine's drifting already.
Ooh,
I gotta go buy a new one.
that's sucks.
crazy to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this easily goes to PlayStation as well. Like my most cherished, back in the memory card days, my PS1 memory card was the Sacred Cow. Like that was the thing that had all the good shit on it, all the RPGs, all the stuff like that, all the Final Fantasies, all the other RPGs, Metal Gear Solid, like the Siphon Filter games 1 through 3. There's some amazing shit on the PlayStation 1. And I grew up around people that had N64, so I was playing shit like Pokemon Puzzle League and like Pokemon Snap and Pokemon Stadium, like when I was back in Florida, and then in 2001 when I moved to Utah. Both of my friend groups in both states had N64s, and I played them with them. There were some sweet fucking like wrestling games.
Oh yeah, I never got into wrestling as a kid, but I know that those wrestling games on the N64 were like the shit.
The world is not enough.
Yeah. Yeah, the GoldenEye, holy fuck! Like, how many hours? Of
I also didn't
GoldenEye?
really grow up with GoldenEye, but
Oh, I did. And Turok on the fucking
yeah,
N64. Oh yeah, dude. I used to spend like it was like third grade. I would spend all of lunch and all of my little breaks pretending to play Turok with one of my buddies. We had like this fucking like group of sheds. There was like 3 little mini sheds, and we would like walk around it and like try to find each other, and then we would just call out when we shot each other. It's like all we did.
Yeah.
Like and then when I left, I would just go play Turok with him. It was just fucking Turok all the time. So I did do some N64 time. I've spent time in it, but right now I'm looking at a wonderful library of PlayStation 1 games, and I have like 3 N64 games.
Yeah.
So that's saying something. And yeah, there's some fucking bullshit games up there that I bought, like the Tarzan game, which I remember actually being kind of fun on the PS1, but there's just so many on the PlayStation. The PlayStation did so many cool things. It was kind of like the Wii of its time almost, where like they were just doing all sorts of crazy games. Like a bunch of random shit would come in, like Tale of the Sun. You got crazy shit like that
yeah.
that only PlayStation would allow. You know, because at this point Nintendo was kind of becoming more isolationist with their stuff. They had some third party, like a decent amount, but not nearly as widespread as PlayStation 1. And
Not even close. Like basically the only third party they had was like Rare, and even then that was like they owned Rare back then.
And they
were
were
like a
just
second party
Microsoft
thing.
sleeper cells, really.
Like you
Yeah.
don't get stuff like Symphony of the Night or Resident Evil. I mean, you do get Resident Evil 2 on N64,
You do, yeah.
but like
Yeah,
you know what I mean though, like
yeah, that doesn't happen. Yeah, it's not.
like Dino Crisis isn't on N64, right?
No, it's only PlayStation.
Yeah.
It's like there's so many things on there.
The fact that Square
Like-
jumped ship just because the discs were way cheaper to produce than cartridges, like, and had more
It
space.
changed.
Yeah,
It changed a lot. Yeah, I think.
It was a hell of a risk. That game was like one of like the most expensive game of all time to produce for many years after.
Yeah,
which
a
is
long
crazy.
time.
It was like over $100 million to make FF7.
Yeah.
And like FF10 was like $20 million to make, so it was like the huge
Yeah.
gap.
Yeah,
and they spent all 20 million on
On James Arnold Taylor.
yep.
Yeah. Cha-ching. Okay, so as machines, N64 has the better hardware, better graphical capabilities, better processing power. It's crazy with these two because their game libraries, unlike the generation right after, where all 3 of those consoles' game libraries overlapped like crazy.
Yeah.
These ones are so separated and so different. Like N64 definitely had like all the action games and shit. And the PlayStation has where we come here as people meeting on RPG shit. So the PlayStation's like Square Co. and Enix.
Yeah, like what did N64 even have in terms of RPGs? It had like Quest 64 and like Tactics Ogre, maybe.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's kind of the thing to keep in mind. PlayStation's definitely geared for the older audience, and N64 for the younger audience. You can just see it by how the machine looks. For example, and like the big toy, like the controllers for the N64 look like a giant toy. That's
A little
what they
bit.
look like.
Yeah.
So, well, the PlayStations are
With like the colorful
you know,
buttons and everything.
the PlayStation with that cream colored look, it looked like it was definitely more of like a 90s, piece of
Hardware.
like
Office equipment.
computer hardware, office
Yeah.
equipment kind of scheme to it. So there's that to consider. I I am super biased on this one. As a kid, yeah, my friends had N64. We had a lot of fun playing them, but I've been going through and playing old Square soft games, and it makes it so that it's really hard for me to choose the N64 over the PlayStation.
Yeah.
They both have amazing libraries, but I mean, the question is like, what do you prefer? This is the question that would be posed to people in high school, if you guys remember. Which game's better, Ocarina of Time or Final Fantasy VII?
Yeah,
That's a tough choice.
it's a toughie.
And maybe Ocarina of Time is better and as like a physical like gaming experience, but FF7's better in a whole bunch of other different ways.
Yeah.
So it's a tough choice, but I am biased, and I will let my bias decide here that PlayStation, I think, edges out the N64 as the better console.
And
I think
oh,
I think
sorry.
it blows it away. Anyway, and also right before you reveal Zach's pick, just look at the way they treat their games, their cases. Like the N64, you get the box, it's all thrown away. I've like seen maybe one
True.
box. Like nobody gives a shit about it.
That's just the
there.
that's the consequence of having cartridges, honestly, because
probably
like
true, yeah.
a CD is made to be put inside a jewel case or a DVD case.
They could have made like cartridge case. I mean, look at the Switch. Those are all.
I mean, like the
cartridges.
Genesis did it too, yeah, but I would imagine that would
Yeah.
also be very expensive to produce. So
Yeah, the Genesis. Everyone threw away their Genesis cases like crazy. They had cases. They fucking you just don't find them because they're just like fuck that. This is
yeah,
stupid.
you find them more than you do like SNES boxes, but yeah,
Remember, this is back in the VHS days, so everything that was blocky like that could be stacked would be stacked.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
true.
it was more convenient to do that than to keep the big cardboard boxes.
Although if I had a
Yeah.
fucking nickel for
Right.
every time a video game YouTuber is like, well, how stupid is it that the N64 games don't have end labels? So you can't
Yeah,
just like when you have them stacked up, you can't see which game's what until you flip through them.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
I
like
feel
there's space for an end label here. The SNES did that. The NES did that. Why did they suddenly change that?
Yeah, I've been trying to collect all the 007 games for no reason, and I was like looking for GoldenEye in a yellow fucking thing, and I was like, wait a minute. Like after last time I was looking, I was like, I don't think it's actually yellow. I think I'm just thinking
blue?
golden, like yellow.
Some of the colored cartridges were cool for the N64.
Yeah, the
World
sports
is Not
ones.
Enough was in a blue one.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. I got that one for PS1.
I think Doom 64 was a red one. And then Donkey Kong was yellow.
Yeah.
But Zach is the odd man out again. He went N64, so PlayStation wins.
Really?
Yeah.
We're just in sync today, guys. Till we
Must be
get
that
to
time of the month.
fucker.
Okay, here comes the big one. PS2 versus SNES.
Did Zach already give his choice?
Yes.
Okay. I'm pretty sure I know what his choice is, but maybe not. Maybe I don't know. Maybe
This
I don't know
one's
the
so
trader
tough.
I've been sitting next to for months. Well, once a month, usually for the last year and a half.
Both of these have fucking amazing libraries. They both have maybe the best
We haven't
controllers.
actually announced it for the audio listeners.
What?
PlayStation 2 versus the SNES.
I said that already.
You did?
Yeah.
I thought
said
you
it.
just said we're going back to it, and I didn't think we announced the console.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
I swear I said
No,
it, but
we need some more build up on this. Like, listen to this fucking. This should be the final one.
the PlayStation 2 versus the SNES, the true final round of this contest. Honestly.
Because whatever wins this will.
We'll probably.
I mean, to be honest, will win this whole entire thing.
Unless Zach does some crazy shit. Which, you don't know, he does occasionally.
I also am a little afraid this one might tie.
Are you?
Yeah. Just a little. Here's the deal. There is no fucking contest on this one. It was the best of its generation. It defined its generation. It took everything from the previous console and it improved upon it, including its game library. It's extremely unique and awesome game library. These games are still fun to play, as opposed to many of the games on the other console that it's up against with all of its junk titles. The the main core, and even more than that, more of like the spread out games on here. Really, they really have a stamp. They really have a quality stamp of approval as far as the
All right. Well, it's okay to be wrong. It
Get the
happens
fuck outta here.
often enough for Joe. Look, you were right, but about half of what you were saying also applies to the PlayStation 2. It takes everything the console before it did, and it makes it better. One of the things that it might suffer from is its first-person shooter library, and this is one of the complaints that everyone that was like an Xbox guy, but was okay with the fact that I was a PlayStation guy. They're like, it's just not enough shooters. Like, I'm just an Xbox guy, and really, in the end, what that really means is it doesn't have Halo on it. So
it's Halo and Call of Duty.
Yeah, but Call of Duty was on PS2.
Yeah, but it was also on the Xbox, so you might as well get Halo too.
I mean, yeah, Halo 2 is
TOO.
way better than Call of Duty. Halo 1 through 3 at least, and then after that it's not so much. But PS2 has the most versatile gaming library ever. There's a lot of garbage. There's a lot of garbage, but there's a lot of shit. This is like the Megadeth of consoles, right? They've got a lot of tracks. And yeah, there's some real bad over there. So there is
You're really gonna put Megadeth above Metallica in this
only in this
contest
analogy.
right now?
I'm not actually going to do that, but I guess that means it falls apart since everyone knows. But I don't know, man. There's something about the PS2 that is just amazing. I mean, Final Fantasy 11 Online, they had that shit until like not that long ago. Like it's within the last 5 years, I'm pretty sure, that it got pulled down. On the fucking PS2. The PS4 was near the end of its life 5 years ago. Or like a couple years away from the PS5 being released. So it's absolutely insane when it comes to that. The online was free. Yeah, it was shittier than Xbox. Of course it was. But some of the greatest moments ever I've had playing were on the fucking PlayStation 2 online, playing these random ass, Delta Force Black Hawk Down games and shooting somebody whose leg is jutting through a fucking piece of machinery. Like, this is just amazing. Those are great times. Absolute joys of times. And then Final Fantasy X, one of my favorite games ever, Final Fantasy 12. Just absolutely phenomenal. The Lord of the Rings games, yeah, those ones are on the other ones too. I don't know, man. It's not that easy of a choice. Like, it's easier than the other ones just because I'm letting...
Come on, man. There's Donkey Kong Country. Like,
Yeah.
just Donkey Kong Country in and of itself beats out some consoles here.
Yeah, just the game.
Okay, to be fair,
game.
most things beat out the N-Gage, so
You can go all the way, like,
testicular torsion beats out the N-Gage.
all those amazing, and I'm bad at platformers, but those fucking platformers on the Super NES are just incredible. Like they were done well. It's like the NES, they're a bit clunky when you play them now, outside of Super Mario, which hasn't aged bad at all. But I mean, like, just the smoothness of like the pinnacle of the 2D like plane that they hit with the SNES, and again, just like taking that baton from the NES and making even more stuff. Donkey Kong Country is, of course, a new property from the Super Nintendo. It's killer. Not to mention the Final Fantasy games on the Super Nintendo. If we're gonna go with Final Fantasy against Final Fantasy, it's a tough one, but I think 6 beats out. Well, does it beat out 10? I don't know. They're both like amazing.
I mean, I don't think you had it beat. No, you did have it beat out 10.
Yeah.
And I did too.
For me,
I was gonna say you both did. I thought it was like 6 and 7 both beat 10.
Well, now we have to aggregate in our mind. So you got 7, 6.
I put 6 as the
10.
best Final Fantasy.
I put 7, but PlayStation isn't in this. And then 10 was the third best to me. So, and you put 10.
I think I put 6, 10, 7. But either way, like 10 and 7 are really close in my mind. So if I fuck that up now, after however many years since I played them both, whatever.
But did you put 4 above 12? I think you actually did, didn't you?
don't think I did.
I
I don't think I did. But 4 is a great game, especially for its time.
very iconic. It's very much a Super Nintendo game. It
Right,
really
yeah.
revolutionized.
It's
Final
like Dragon Quest IV, but good.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, yeah, I have the reference for that. Yeah, I can't, like, the game library is so sick on the SNES. Even like a bad game is not a bad game on the SNES. Did the SNES have bad games?
Yeah, it had plenty of them.
Where? I've never played a bad game on
Batman
the Super
Forever.
Nintendo. I played a shitload on the PS2.
Yeah.
Lester the Unlikely.
Yeah, but we got like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon on PS2.
Yeah, but
I
we
mean,
also
movie
have
tie-in games are always going to be shitty on every console.
we got Grand Theft Auto 3. You have Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. You know, you've got the Burnout 3.
Okay, I'm gonna put this debate to bed because I have spent a lot of time with the SNES and the PS2 in my childhood. These are both like probably two of my favorite consoles of all time.
I have also spent a lot of time with these. I think Schweiss is the only one who hasn't spent a lot of time with both.
Not a whole lot with the Super NES. I played the greats, but not like religiously or anything.
When you guys were talking about ranking the Final Fantasy games, Joe said that 7 doesn't count because PlayStation's not part of this, and I'm here to say it does because the PS2 is backwards compatible
Oh my god, who gives a fuck?
and it can play
God.
DVDs.
Also,
Look at
Dirge
fucking-
of Cerberus.
The shittiest graphics
Checkmate.
of all 3 of the consoles that came out.
Yes, and yet
Yes,
everything
dude.
came out on it.
It's
Yeah,
clunky.
including
Like,
Resident
it's
Evil
still-
4 that sold twice
it's-
on PS2.
its 3D gameplay of most of the games on the PS2 did not age well. It does not. Like, they're
Well, 3D
clunky
just
and
doesn't. That's the
yeah,
hard
it just
part.
does. But the thing is, the SNES, as opposed to the NES or like the Atari games that came before it, it's the pinnacle of what it does. It's the best at what it does, and it has an amazing game library to go with it. I think game library wise they match, and the machine is better for its generation.
I think
That's
the PS2, they do have amazing game libraries, both of them. I think the PS2 edges it out just by virtue of being newer, so there's newer genres to take advantage of. Music games, way better fighting games, like yeah, Marvel
There's
vs.
no-
Capcom
no,
2, all the
no,
Tekken games, Soul Calibur
The
2.
fighting games on the SNES have aged better than the 3D fighting games on the PS2.
Probably, yeah,
Well,
but there's a lot
for
of fighting
sure.
games on the PS2 that aren't 3D.
I don't know what those are, to be fair. Like, frankly honest, I have no idea. I've only ever
Guilty
played
Gear.
like Soul Calibur and fucking Mortal Kombat on the PS2 era stuff.
Is so good.
Those things do not age well with their 3D fighting stuff in comparison to like Mortal Kombat, and I'm sure for people who like Street Fighter still play fantastic on the old PS2 or on the old 2D console.
That's true. People still play the SNES version like competitively and shit. So, that's fair. That's fair.
I still think
So-
I still think the library has more variety on the PS2. Again, maybe by virtue of it being a newer console, but because there were more genres at the time than there were back when the SNES came out. And I think the backwards compatibility and the DVD playing functionality of the PS2 is not to be understated. I mean, that was the DVD functionality was the reason the PS2 sold as much as it did originally, because it could also just be used as a cheap DVD player.
They got the format right twice in a row, and they wrecked because of it.
Yeah.
Well, it took them a while.
I
to
love
wreck
the SNES. I think it has some of the greatest games ever made, but like the sheer volume of things you can do with a PS2, I think completely outpaced the SNES.
it. Yeah, God of War 1, God of War 2, Metal Gear Solid 3, like
What did the Zach say?
Zach said PS2.
Fuck
Nice.
you guys. Get the fuck out of here.
Sorry, man.
This
this
is
is
no
gonna be-
contest. The SNES is the best console of all time, period.
Well,
this is going to be one of those things where like your winning pick is like 4th place, even though it actually would have been 2nd place because it would have
God,
wiped everything else out.
Shits.
okay, so we're at the semifinals. It's kind of a doozy here. We got the PS2
fuck.
versus the PlayStation, and we got the DS versus the NES. Do you want to keep
Man,
going?
Couldn't you have like spread this shit out a little bit?
I
Like,
tried.
you got father killing son. We got like fratricide.
Are we
going
gonna
on.
are we gonna
PlayStation
go into the
versus
next round or
PlayStation
not?
2? You know what? I think the PlayStation is better than the PlayStation 2. Get the fuck out of here.
Are we going to keep
I like
going?
the game library of the PlayStation. Yes, we're going to keep going.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to text Zach. You can talk amongst yourselves.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
I think
Which one
I
do
think
you
I
wanna
already
do
know what
first?
my winners are for both of these. So
Which one do you want to do first? Nintendo or PlayStation?
Let's
you
do
pick,
Nintendo.
buddy. You're the one who's mad.
Nintendo? Yeah, Nintendo DS versus the NES. This is no question. Nintendo DS is just like, it's cool. It's a handheld. It's great. It's great at what it does. It's sold a bazillion consoles, whatever. The NES is for what it is, what it's defining, the games that are on it that still work to this day. Not as well as the SNES, but still great games, mind you. And like everything that they put forward, everything on the DS is just a big thank you to what the NES brought before it. And I've also played more time on the NES games, and I just like them. So I'm going to say the NES, the original, or not the original console, but the console that defined what a console should be.
Yeah, I kind of wish that we had Super NES v PS1 and PS2 v NES or one of those two combos instead. But I think you're probably right. I don't know. The DS is pretty good, but the NES does have a lot of great classics. I don't know. I honestly, these are two that I haven't spent that much time with. And the DS, I do think probably the best handheld ever, the 3DS at least. Probably the best handheld system that's ever been made. As far as like how solid it is overall, great games, great setup, great like everything internally is fucking amazing. And the Nintendo DSi, at the very least, was like the prototype of the 3DS. So I give it a lot of props for that. It's really Nintendo truly experimenting and truly defining what a handhold is. But I kind of do think the NES. I think this is one that I'm going to give to the legacy of the NES. And the Nintendo DS, it's kind of honestly out of the ones that are left, it's definitely the weakest link, like for sure.
Yeah.
Like it's easily the lowest tier of these four, in my mind. So I'm gonna give it to the NES as well. I think Legend of Zelda, phenomenal, and like you said earlier, the original Super Mario Bros. Like they aged amazingly. Like all of there's a lot of great stuff on the NES. Final Fantasy 1 and Final Fantasy 2, pretty great. I hear
Final
Dragon
Fantasy
Quest is
3.
good. And Final Fantasy 3, yeah, also that's solid. But I think NES takes it. What about you?
I'm simply
Is
just
there a reason that your camera's not showing up for the last 20 minutes here?
yeah.
I'm
I
waiting
tried
for you to,
fucking
like,
with the
do a
focus
thing.
and it like broke it, and I can't fix it. So whatever, we'll just deal.
Okay.
He
All
is
right.
the squares now.
Yeah.
The dancing squares.
Cube man.
Yeah, I'm just gonna simply say DS is my pick for this one. The NES is very influential, and it has good like side-scrolling platformers and stuff like that. Some good RPGs, but I think that all that stuff the DS can do and more, and it does it better. DS has good platformers. DS has good RPGs, great RPGs, and it's even got stuff that the NES just can't do, which I know is a
Well,
bit
yeah.
unfair, but it's like. I don't know. I think the game library on the DS is stronger. I think it's got a way bigger variety to it, and
I think I don't know, man. Just the weight of the legacy of the NES is really just
the weight of the
weighing it.
legacy of the NES is very important. But
And the DS, I feel like it's just like, well, it peaked its console, especially the 3DS was kind of like the next like slight level up.
right,
Like it kind of like peaked what a handheld console should be, and then everybody got a cell phone, and that will soon be forgotten if that ever happened. The NES though, like consoles are still going. As long as consoles still go, the bloodline of the NES flows on.
I agree
Go
with
ahead.
you, but in my heart of hearts, it's still the DS.
That's fair. That's what I did with PS2, kind of.
And
Like,
Zach
it's
has not
real.
gotten back to me yet, so we'll have to argue the PS2 versus the PS1
All
in the
right.
meantime to see if
Did you
that one's
check
going to be
into that one as well?
what.
Did you text him both of these matchups?
Yes, at the same time.
Okay, good. Good.
And you know what? What I'm going to say about the PS2 versus the PS1? PS1's got a really good game library. A lot of great games. But you know what else can play those? PS2 can.
Get the fuck out of here with that shit. Like, that shouldn't even be, like, that should be a very small part of the contest here.
It is a small part of the contest, but it is a part of the contest nonetheless. The
All right.
PS2 has an amazing game library that is only bolstered by the fact that it can also access the PlayStation 1's librry. That is a very big
technologically-
deal.
Technologically, they're both the worst in their generation. I think we both agree that as far as game libraries are concerned, they're probably the best of their generations. Man. Shit. This one's hard.
I know.
This one's a difficult one. Like, I love the original PlayStation games. I love the stuff that came out in the PS2, but a lot of stuff I love from the PS2 was also on the Xbox, was also on the GameCube.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's the rough thing. It's like PlayStation 1 was almost entirely exclusives. And PS2 is like, it's definitely like the waters were definitely a little muddied up, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. A lot of the big movers were moving from the cartridge to the disc, so they didn't produce on the cartridge. So PS1 had a lot of exclusivity with a shit ton of games that were not from Sony.
Yeah, they both had a lot of games. Like, that's something that anything like PS3 on kind of doesn't have the luxury of having, is like huge game libraries, because games take way longer to make. So you used to get a Final Fantasy a year, and now you get one every 3.5 to 4 years. You know, like, that's a big difference in those generations. But both of these had the luxury of having games that were quickly made. So they both have a lot in that as well. Fuck, man, this is hard. PlayStation 2 does have better gimmicks, I guess. It has the internet, it has DVDs.
I also just generally think, like, of this era of gaming where it wasn't like we had AAA games, but not like we know them today. Like, games weren't so unbelievably expensive that we had to wait years and years and years unless it was like a Final Fantasy or something. I think of this era of that type of game where it's a little clunky but still retains a lot of that playability. I think the PS2 was the peak, because PS3 was kind of like this new transition point where, like, games just started getting prohibitively expensive to make to a certain degree because the graphical fidelity was just that much better. I think the PS2 hit that nice middle ground. Like, that was the peak of when it hit the nice middle ground of, like, these games aren't super expensive to produce, so they can be produced within a year or maybe a little longer, and they still are good play-wise even today. PlayStation 1 also has that to a degree. I just think it's stronger on the PS2.
And the PS2, just from a popularity contest as well, we can add in that the PS2 is it still the biggest console, or the second biggest?
Is
It
it?
is. Yeah, the one that's closest to it is the DS.
But
It's right
I
behind it.
mean,
Yeah,
it
PS2
was
is
just
still
a-
the most sold. The DS is just the DS is just behind the PS2.
yeah, and it counts its 3DS and DS sales together, I think. from
No,
what I
it doesn't.
remember. Oh, it doesn't. Wow.
It does not.
No.
I'm surprised. Fuck. Okay, I'm gonna go with. I was thinking PlayStation 1, but the more I'm thinking about the PlayStation 2, the more I'm remembering games, and I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, PS2. I don't think it's aged very well. I think most of the games you got to play on the PS2, you got to play like remasters of, and because, especially the more action-oriented type stuff.
I think
But,
the fact that a lot of the PS2 games that are, like, beloved did end up getting remasters is also a sign of quality. That, like, that library is just so fucking strong.
Yeah.
You definitely see a lot more remasters of games from this era than, say, the PS1 era, I want to say.
Yeah, that's true.
I can't really quantify that, but when
that might
games like
also be,
Cell Damage are getting fucking
popular.
remastered, or like Battle for Bikini Bottom, you know what I mean?
Yeah, good point. I'm going PS2 on this one,
Schweiss, what do you say?
even though it
Um,
should be against the SNES.
I'm going. I'm going PS2. I think it's really close, and a lot of the reasoning Joe gave for SNES, the PlayStation 1 has, and the PS2 doesn't have quite as much. As far as like the start of these big franchises that we know and love, I mean, PS2 has God of War. PS2 has, I guess, doesn't have Grand Theft Auto, but it has like the making of Grand Theft Auto as a big deal. PS1 actually was the start of Grand Theft Auto. But there's a lot of things on the PlayStation 2. I have a lot of fond memories of the PlayStation 2. I've always owned one. I had a PS1 first, but when my PS1, I can't remember if I gave it to somebody or it broke or whatever, because I had my PS2 and it was backwards compatible. So I've only ever had the two since then. It's the only PlayStation console other than the Vita that I don't own. Is the PS1. Yeah, some of the greatest games ever are on both of them. But I just have too many fond memories with the PlayStation 2 that I can't in good conscience put the PS1 above it. As far as RPGs go overall, probably the PS1, but I do think the PS2 does have some of the best ones as well. So it's kind of a toss up in a lot of ways, but yeah,
It kind of depends on what you're looking for RPG wise too, because the PS1 has a lot of good turn based RPGs. The PS2
Yeah.
kind of has a little bit of everything. Like you got good action RPGs on there, like Tales of the Abyss and Odin Sphere.
Yeah, I
You know.
gotta invest in a CRT TV. I gotta get another one
Yeah,
one of these days.
just
so I
check
can-
Facebook Marketplace. You probably find some people just giving them away.
Yeah, I probably will, but I
Yeah.
never look at that when
all
I have
online.
spending money.
Right. So PS2 takes it. I'm waiting. Zach has seen the message. He has not gotten back to me yet, because if he chooses,
fucker.
I don't think he's going to choose DS because he chose NES, or he chose Switch over the DS, which makes me think he's not going to choose the DS over the NES, but I don't know. Because if he chooses DS, then it's a tie and it goes to the audience. So that's like the only reason I'm trying to like,
Yeah, we're waiting on him.
I guess I'll just tell him PS2 won.
it's the only one standing.
God, come on, Zach.
I know, hold on. It says it's active now.
This has been kind of a tough set today, especially. Like it seemed easy going in and looking at the brackets, but then as we were
You really think so? I thought these were like juggernaut matchups.
no, I thought they were easy, but then when we started actually discussing it, then I was like, oh no, these are rough. This is hard to decide because like I'm collecting all the PS1 games, not the PS2 games, not yet. I've considered it, but there's a hell of a lot more fucking PS2 games than there are PS1 games, so I'm kind of afraid of that. But
I think due to just the nature of the podcast we've been doing for a decade, it's rough because especially that PS2 versus PS1 thing.
Yeah.
I think that's a rough time.
I mean, that's cruel. The fact that got that matchup.
yeah,
Yeah, especially since it should have been against the SNES.
Well, also you got to figure with 5 PlayStation consoles, the chances of 2 of them going up against each other at some point was not that crazy.
On this PlayStation 1 versus the SNES, I choose the SNES. Thank you very much.
I might even choose the PS1 over the SNES, honestly. It's tough.
God.
yeah, maybe.
It's really tough, man. Again, I love the Super Nintendo a lot. But just some of the newer consoles having the benefit of having more types of games. Also, I forgot while I'm waiting for Zach to fucking finally get back to me, at some point did someone tell you your Wii was upside down during the first episode of this month?
No one told me. I noticed it today.
Okay.
And
I was
like,
going to say something. I'm
upside
like,
down.
your Wii's upside down, right?
Yeah, I saw it, and can't remember why. I think I had it on purpose because this way, you like at the camera, you see like all like the stickers on the bottom of the thing, and I don't really think it looks as good, but
Right.
yeah.
As
You
long
know,
as you weren't running it upside down, I guess. Yeah, just put it on it. Yeah.
Yeah, but then I got a big blank spot.
yeah.
So it's a place to put another console.
I think I would probably put the SNES above the PS1. I think so. It'd be close, but
That's a
I don't
toughie.
even, I don't even think the PS1 is the second best PlayStation. So, I mean, I think the PS4
Oh,
is
come
the second.
on, Zach. You're killing me.
Zach.
And PS4 versus SNES,
'Cause, I
that
mean-
would be rough.
Okay. If he doesn't get back to me within a few minutes, I'll just have to assume the NES won. But let's just run through this final matchup in the event that it is, in fact, the PS2 versus the NES. What do you choose?
Oh, look. Like the SNES is just the improved NES. I say just, like it's not the greatest console of all time. The NES is probably the most important console ever made, against the PS2, which is the biggest console ever made. The game library, although iconic from the NES, was improved in the next generation. There is still great stuff on the PS2 that's still great to this day, and it also, like, as a gimmick, it has had so much more to offer within its generation. Outside of just being a game console, which I know is not fair to the NES, but it is what it is. Barely nudging it out, I would say the PS2.
Yeah, I'd say it beats it. NES is kind of like more of a pioneer console, kind of more like the PS1 as far as like defining what the next 20 plus years is going to hold for the console and for the exclusives and all the shit like that. But I think the PS2's library is definitely stronger than the NES's. I think they both have kind of aged poorly. I think the PS2 has aged more poorly overall, just because of all the mechanics that have come into play shortly after the PS2's era, like with Halo 2, really Halo 1 and Halo 2 really revolutionizing like first-person shooters and stuff like that. Like some of those old FPSs on fucking like PS1, PS2 are rough as fuck. Like there was a trophy in the
Let's not forget Bounty Hunter.
yeah, well, that at least had like sensible controls. It was vicious. But
Wait,
like
there weren't trophies on PS2. What are you talking about?
no, I know, but I was doing a trophy for Medal of Honor Frontline, the remaster.
Oh, well, that's not the fault of whatever.
No, but it had me play a level with the OG Medal of Honor controls, and admittedly, it was a PS1 game.
Right.
But my God, dude, that was maybe one of the hardest levels I've ever done in a shooter ever. It was like bananas. The shit that I had to fucking do, like it was like the one stick wasn't for moving and the other stick wasn't for aiming. It was like one axis per stick, and it was fucking me up, man. And like circle was shoot, and like I don't even know if R1 was like to pull the scope up. I'm like my hands are all like fucking getting the palsy palm going on. Like they like don't know how to react to what's before me, and it was crazy. And like all of that was really streamlined with the Halo games. So, and some of the PS2 games have kind of similar problems, like
Yeah,
007
those
Nightfire. Like
PS2 and PS1 shooters did not age well.
no,
The
like
Xbox Ones did.
some of the later ones. Some of the later ones, and like maybe like Red Faction, those aged really well because they have the controls that make sense. They have the modern shooter controls because they were around. Either they just did it and weren't as big, so it wasn't a revolutionizing of it, or it came after one of the Halos and they took after that. But like
Yeah, I think
playing,
the action games, though, I think the other action games, like hack and slash kind of stuff, did age pretty well. The big ones.
oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, Devil May
So-
Cry, God of War.
Devil May Cry 3 is like one of the greatest games ever made.
Yeah. So you got those. I actually like Metal Gear Solid 3 actually
Yeah,
does quite well. And so yeah, there's things on the PS2 that still have aged well. Like you would have to play it on a CRT TV in order to get like the actual experience of playing it. with its like correct response time. Because if you play a PS2 on for you younger listeners, if you play a PS2 on one of these flat screen TVs,
One of these newfangled flat screens.
it's not like it has to convert the signal to it has to convert the signal from the AV cords into something else so that the TV can display it, and that small amount of delay makes things just not play as well.
Yeah.
So you need those remasters and stuff when you don't necessarily need them on like say the next generation of consoles where they have the HDMI inputs. So like
true.
PS2 stuff like feels clunky, feels horrible, but we're also not necessarily playing it right sometimes. So like I'm thinking of Dawn of Mana right now. It's what I'm thinking of. Like my experience playing Dawn of Mana versus yours with the CRT TV. It was like clearly it was easier on the CRT TV to deal with everything.
So wait, would Schweiss go PS2 or NES?
I go PS2.
Okay, because I would also go
Oh, yeah.
PS2.
All right.
So hold on. Let's run through this just in case. If the DS one, would this change?
No.
No.
So PS2 takes it
Absolutely
either
not.
way.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So because of some bullshit,
Blame RNGesus, man. I don't know what to tell you. That's just the way they were seated.
man, fuck y'all. That's God. All right. It should have been against the Super Nintendo, but whatever. We had that discussion on the same episode, so I guess it doesn't matter. But PlayStation 2 has been deemed by Nude Clan as the greatest console of all time. Congratulations to the PlayStation 2. It was up against how many other consoles? Like 36 or something?
Yeah. I want to say 32.
32 consoles?
32 different consoles, yeah.
Wow. I think we knew from the beginning it would be up there for sure.
Yeah,
PS2.
for sure.
But
It had to take down the Vita, the PS4, and its own predecessor to get there.
Yeah. Some of those were the Vita was easy, but the PS4 and the PS1, those were tough. And the NES, or Super NES, that was brutal.
Man, guys, I just kind of
Feel deflated.
well, one of these days when Final Fantasy 14 ends, I'll be able to play some other games. There's definitely a part of me that just wants to find like a list of the greatest games of all time and just start like etching my way through them. We've definitely played a lot for Nude Clan, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of like classics we're missing in sacrifice to things like Danganronpa.
Yeah.
Like
Just fucking around.
we've never fucking reviewed Ocarina of Time for the show, but we gotta play some Danganronpa. Anyway, guys, thank you for listening to Nude Clan this month. I hope you enjoyed these episodes that we put out. Follow us on Twitter at Nude Clan Podcast. You can see all the other links to all of our stuff down below. You can log your media through Hogib. You can support us on Patreon. You can support us by going to audibletrial.com/Nude Clan if you want to get some audiobooks. And you can also check out our TeePublic store, where you can buy a Nude Clan shirt and see us doing the episodes live on twitch.tv/Nude Clan Gaming. Keep your notifications up for that so you can hop in and be able to chat as we go along here. Thank you to those who did pop in here: Truthseek, Krinital, Dr. Roxo, a lot
Dead
of the
Islander.
usuals, and Dead Islander. And so thank you guys for showing up here. I think that's going to be it for this episode. We'll see you guys next time.
Live always in the nude.
Walk with your PlayStation 2 held high. And since Zach isn't here, I'll just say I've been naked since the camera went off and you guys couldn't tell.
Fuck off. It should have been the SNES.
No!